Good evening, everyone. My name is Peter Meke Hadioha. I'm joining from Lagos, Nigeria.
Good evening, House. My name is Reverend Paul T. Adebayo. I'm joining from Lagos. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joy Jemine Anako. I'm joining from Lagos, Nigeria.
Like I said, for you to introduce yourself, you just have to use the raise hand button to do that. So we don't clash into each other, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sikiru Olalaide from Lagos.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Princess Tiwalade Fakunda, the Vice President of this great institute, and I'm from Abuja.
Thank you very
much. Okay, good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is David Awotipe. I'm speaking from Osogbo, Osun State, Nigeria.
My name is Aisha Ogiraki. I'm joining in from the UK, United Kingdom. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I am Michaeline Holdermarch, Dr. Michaeline Holdermarch, most ambassador of this wonderful institute, and I am calling in from London, UK. Hi, everyone.
Nice to have you.
Good evening, everyone. This is Agnes. I'm calling from Massachusetts, USA. I'm a fellow of the institute. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Everyone, my name is Emeka Emmanuel. I'm from Port Harcourt, a fellow of the institute. Thank you.
Let's have Cosmos, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Cosmas Mahaka. I'm calling from Enugu, Nigeria.
Thank you so much. Can we have Dr. Marvin? Dr. Marvin, please.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Marvin Madison. I'm calling from Switzerland.
Thank you. Nice to have you. You're welcome.
Pleasure.
Can we have Yomi, please?
Good evening, everyone. I'm calling from Mississauga, Canada. Right again.
Nice. Thank you. Should be more than 9 your side, right? So
it's past 1 here right now.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
We have someone in the afternoon, right? Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
From the US too, we have someone in the morning or in the afternoon as well. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I think that's all. If we are done with the introduction, we can mute our mics, please. Please mute your microphones. Thank you so much. Antoinette, you have to thank you. Put in your mind, that's fine. All right. Thank you. Okay, so without wasting any further time, can anyone hear me? Because some persons say they can't hear. Can you hear me? Please, if you can hear me, just send a message on the chat box.
Yes, you are audible. You are audible.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Mr. President, please, we have to have you to run a brief introduction, or we can go ahead with the introduction for the speaker of today. Please, I need your permission before we can comment. Hello, Mr. President, are you there? Ambassador Dr. Oyedeko, please.
We can proceed. Our time is fast spent already.
Okay. All right. Without wasting much of our time, for today's So, good evening, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. We are about to start this webinar, and the topic today are issues in algorithm and data protection. And our speaker for today is no other person than Barrister Antonetta Rita Okoye. Is a fellow of the Institute of Information Management, our able fellow in the Institute. It's a pleasure to have you here. Without wasting much time, please, we would like to hand over this webinar now to be our great speaker. Thank you so much, Barrister. Please, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much. Let me just start sharing my screen. Good evening, everybody.
Joshua,
can you all see my screen, please?
yes, please.
Okay, brilliant. Okay.
Yes, we can see your screen. Good evening, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening, wherever you are. Today's title is Issues in Algorithmic Decision-Making and Data Protection. And I want us to be facilitating conversations with one another. I want us to be thinking about the ethical issues when it comes to using algorithms to construct decision-making and how this has some implications on data protection and the legal entities that are supposed to uphold the legal rights of data subjects. So as we start this, we need to find out what are algorithms in the first place and how are they used by companies to process decision-making. So algorithms are encoded procedures used to transform input data into a desired output. What this clearly means is that when we use our data or input our data on a form, for instance, for a company to realize who we are as a customer, they actually use an algorithm, a computer system, something that is generated in the background to now input that data into an output. Algorithmic decision-making is the use of knowledge generated by algorithms to make or inform decisions. So companies can now use that data, our data, to inform decisions on whether to use advertisements towards us, so targeted advertisements, or for us to be able to say, okay, this is something I wish to do. For example, when the data from a weather prediction algorithm is used to determine flight paths, and this is actually something that happened a couple of days ago here in the UK, whereas Storm Eunice was really producing some abysmal outcomes for us. So what happened is that some of these planes, when they had to land, they had to be used an algorithm to predict whether it was safe enough for them to be able to land. Now, this shows that how data can be used to make decision-making on our behalf for the purposes of safety and security. However, there are several ethical issues and benefits when organizations resort to using algorithmic decision-making in their operational practices. And in this webinar, I want us to really see where we can actually make a clear judgment whether it's a good thing for a company to use algorithms or whether it's a bad thing, or whether there needs to be more sorts of regulation involved. So recommendation algorithms. Have you ever noticed that after buying something online, the store often recommends similar items that you may wish to purchase? Sometimes Amazon can do that. You've purchased something online, they think that, okay, because Barrister Antoinette bought this item, she might be interested in buying this other item. Therefore, they provide you with some targeted advertising, which could be great for you, but sometimes, do you think it's really worthwhile for them to know your data, for them to be able to make a choice for you? Some music streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music can create personalized playlists from a single song choice. Now, as your choice, you selected a song which you wanted to download. And based on that choice, now Spotify and Apple Music have produced some kind of playlists that might be recommended for you. These recommendations are by an algorithm that monitors browsing behavior, your device type, your location. It uses this data, your data, to create a profile of the user, and that's you. Content is then personalized for the user based on that profile. But then again, the question raised could be the data protection implications from the above. Being able to consent to your data being used, but then you are now being given a choice whether to be given another song or maybe a product that is tailored to your needs. Let's look at some case studies. First of all, we need to actually understand the consumer data with algorithms and why companies actually use consumer data and why algorithms are used in the first place. Companies are able to understand how they can increase purchases or time spent on a platform by tailoring their service or recommendations to a customer. At the end of the day, is the customer has the power, who has the purchasing power to be able to say yes or no to a product. Companies can then understand why customers switch to competitors in the market, and then they can actually adjust their own tactics when it comes to reaching out to the market. Companies understand how they proactively prevent fraud or security breaches. And then, of course, this links to data protection issues and compliance with data protection laws by the companies themselves. If we look at Netflix, for instance, Netflix is the world's largest subscription streaming service. It hosts a massive variety of movies and series, and it has a sophisticated content recommendation system, again, created by an algorithm in the background. Netflix supplements the viewing data with data from third parties, such as internet service providers, from mobile providers as well. However, the use of Netflix algorithmic decision-making may have consequences on data protection. And it's also an example of how decision-making is used with the use of an algorithm. Data is imported, data is gathered, data is analyzed, and then it's now decided what content to present to individual users. Now, you're probably thinking that, do I really have a choice, or is it an algorithm making a choice for me? These are, again, some of the ethical issues we need to think about when we realize that algorithms are actually in the background. We don't see them, but they do produce some kind of output, which we then see. We don't see the processing, but we see the result. Next case study is Spotify. Spotify is a music streaming platform that hosts podcasts and videos. It does employ an algorithmic decision-making tool that is designed to analyze user preferences and make recommendations to its users. Then again, you're probably thinking, well, I've already given consent for these companies to use my data, but do you know how it's being processed? Do you think that the recommendations they give to you at the end of the day, is it really your choice or just an algorithm just being able to take a lucky guess? The process used to generate the profiles that inform recommendations for users is known as algorithmic profiling. And again, there are several ethical concerns when it comes to profiling users. Imagine being profiled by an algorithm. What is an algorithm itself? It's not even a human, it doesn't have emotions, but are we comfortable with that? That is why there is sometimes a need for regulation, whether by law, by ethics, or even generally by the people. When algorithmic decision-making is incorporated into governance, algorithms can be used to learn and evaluate what behavior is allowed and what should be prevented. Again, it's making a choice for the people. Let's illustrate this by seeing two approaches to managing traffic. So the first approach, a variety of sensors and cameras are used to monitor traffic. When accidents or heavy traffic are detected, road safety officials are sent to common congestion points around the city to divert traffic manually. And this is what happens in London. Billboards are used to inform commuters about the traffic status. Again, this is really a positive thing, to be able to use data to navigate traffic, to inform people about probably take an alternative route. So we can see some benefits when algorithms are put to use. The second approach is when algorithms use national databases, mobile phone movement, traffic camera information, and it provides real-time traffic analysis. The algorithms continuously optimize traffic flow by changing the timing of traffic lights and rerouting vehicles. Digital billboards are used to change the speed limit on different roads and motorways as well. When we compare the two approaches, you will note that the first approach uses algorithmic analysis. It generates new information. It helps policymakers determine when to deploy additional resources. However, in the second approach, the algorithmic decision-making changes the driving environment itself, as the algorithm's decisions changes the rules that drivers are subject to. Again, it's like we are subjecting ourselves to what the algorithm has said. This is an example of algorithmic regulation. According to Professor Nyong, algorithmic regulation involves the follows: decision-making systems that regulate a domain of activity in order to manage risk or alter behavior through continual computational generation of knowledge from data emitted and directly collected from numerous dynamic components. Now, this is quite a mouthful, but let's break it down. We need to define it so that we can understand it and whether it actually works in today's digital and data-driven world. So algorithmic regulation is a type of algorithmic decision-making. It attempts to regulate individual behavior with a particular policy goal in place. Algorithms analyze data, generate outputs that are used to change the behavior of individuals to meet a pre-specified goal. So we're thinking, we're having our behavior change based on an algorithm that has taken our data. When are we now in control? When is it useful? When does it become too much that we are now giving too much of our data for an algorithm to now process, and we don't see the processing, but it generates an output. It generates a decision for us. I want us to be thinking about those ethical issues as well. And there are many more issues to consider when we look at algorithmic decision-making. What risks or challenges are associated with algorithmic decision-making? What are some of the challenges of regulating algorithmic decision-making? Which frameworks are more suitable to address the potential challenges, such as ethical or legal resolutions or ideas? What are the potential strengths and weaknesses of introducing legal regulations for algorithmic decision-making? When can now somebody in Parliament in the UK, for instance, or House of Assembly, can now say that, okay, let's start regulating the behavior of algorithms? What are the potential strengths and weaknesses of allowing developers to continue to create algorithms without legal regulation? Is the developers, software developers, who are creating these algorithms in the background, but they are not the ones processing the information or the data. It's these algorithms, it's this piece of artificial intelligence. So my thoughts is that I'm not an algorithmic skeptic, but instead of algorithmic decision-making being regulated by the law, politicians, or ethics, let public opinion and debate and active public participation be the way in regulating algorithms in today's total and global world. Just as a jury trial system is used to determine an accused's guilt, the same jury system can be modeled in terms of deciding the morals or the functionality when an organization uses algorithmic decision-making in its processes. So in a jury trial, we are able to, well, the accused is able to be cross-examined, evidence is able to be tested or to be tried or to be questioned based on particular evidence rules. Again, can we now use a kind of similar system to determine whether an algorithm is used in a functional way and whether it benefits society at hand? There's a case on the Tay chatbot, which was developed by Microsoft's technology and research teams. Okay, it was targeted at 18 to 24-year-olds to experiment with and conduct research on conversational understanding. Microsoft stated that this chat box was used to engage and entertain people where they connect with each other online through casual and playful conversation. We all know that data is huge. We all know that social media is also very huge. However, when conversations started happening with the chatbot, it extended to racist, inflammatory, and political statements. It was taken out of context. This algorithm started producing outputs and results, which was a bit to the opposite of what it was designed to do. Without its emotional complex, Tay, this chatbot, was rejected by society because of its racist and fascist comments. So a user would be using the chat box, and sometimes a question would be posed to the chat box, and the chat box would say something very vulgar in the end. Until we just know that because machines don't have emotions like humans, and until they can learn emotions, they can regulate themselves, much more than public opinion, law, and ethics combined. Therefore, we need to have the power back. We need to be given the power back, and we use this as a form of regulation, as seen in the Tay chatbot's case. we were able, as users of the Tay chat box, were able to say, no, this is actually not right. This algorithm is out of control. This piece of artificial intelligence needs some kind of regulation. We all know that ethics looks at what is morally right and wrong, and this is subjective compared to the law, which is an objective tool. What we need is a framework of cooperation that will take ideas from democracy, from law, from ethics, and enable the desirable regulation of algorithmic behavior. There are risks and challenges when it comes to algorithmic decision-making. And this includes the black box problem, whereby we cannot see the huge amount of data being analyzed and its processing. This is taken in the background and we can't see this. We can only visualize the outcome, which results in transparency and accountability issues. The question we would ask ourselves is, one, how does an algorithm reach the decision it makes? How do we know? How can we measure it? Number two, who do we hold accountable for the poor functionality, implementation, and results from an algorithm? These unanswered questions means that there is room for regulation, either with public opinions, resulting to legal measures, or ethical standards. There have been issues of institutional bias in algorithmic decision-making. And because we know that algorithmic decision-making is a product of human innovation, they can also be prone to human error. There can be embedded or institutional bias from algorithms. And there's an example in the UK a couple of years ago during the first lockdown, in which prevented students from doing their exams, their A-level exams. So therefore, the UK's Department of Education introduced an algorithm that used students' social economic data to give them unfair grades. They basically said that if you are based in a particular environment or postcode or an address or location, this is going to be your grade. And it shouldn't be that based on our socioeconomic data that students should be given unfair grades. Therefore, it was actually scrapped. The algorithm was scrapped. And it just shows that public opinion does matter when we see algorithms producing results which are not sensible and which obviously are inflicting more harm than good. In the UK, the police force are using artificial intelligence to inform custodial decisions that determine an offender's chances of reoffending. So again, here, there was an artificial intelligence called HART that stands for Harm Assessment Risk Tool, and it was shown to be discriminating against the poor, basically claiming that if you lived in a particular area, you were determined to reoffend. So it just shows that the algorithm wasn't able to take into consideration someone's remorse. It just takes into consideration pure facts, black and white, no gray area. Whereas if an offender was speaking in front of a judge, for instance, that offender could plead his or her case and show remorse. And therefore the judge will be able to say, okay, you are no longer a threat to society, you can actually move on with your life, you have learned your lessons. But an algorithm can't do that. It will just give you an answer straight, yes or no. A review of the HART's operation found large discrepancies between human predictions and those made by the system. Including location and social demographic data can reinforce existing biases in policing decisions and the judicial system. Again, being able to recognize this from an early start does fuel public opinion and public debate. And therefore we'll be able to say, hold on, let's take a step back. Is this institutional bias worth it? Or can we move on or improve our algorithms? Because algorithms do have some great benefits as well. We just need to make sure that there's a balance between the two. There are more controversial biases in processing data. In 2019, a US financial regulator opened an investigation into claims that Apple's credit card offered different credit limits for men and women. The algorithms that were used to set limits were found to be inherently biased against women. Some people actually came out and started explaining that, hold on, my wife and I, we both opened an account with Apple. My wife has a better credit score, yet she was given a lower credit usage. And why is that? Why is that the algorithm was free to use biases against women And it's not just in gender cases as well. There's also issues when it comes to race. The issue was that when the algorithms involved were developed, they were trained on a data set in which women pose a greater financial risk than men. The algorithm was told this, but it also processed the data. And again, we're not seeing what's happening behind the background. This caused the software to provide lower credit limits for women in general. And there was uproar. So Apple had to really go back to the drawing board and fix the issue. Again, public opinion does matter when it comes to algorithms that are implemented in decision-making. I wonder, have you ever noticed that your GPS has chosen a route that you think is suboptimal, but you decided to trust the system rather than your own navigational ability? While some people may display a tendency to trust automated systems more than human decision-making, it is important to remember that these algorithms are the product of human design. They're not perfect. And of course, we also need to take an objective look. And one risk associated with algorithmic decision-making is the potential for discrimination against certain groups, whether based on race, or based on gender, or based on your social economic status. Lack of transparency is also an issue when it comes to algorithmic decision-making, and the absence of oversight mechanisms, like who is able to see what is happening in the background. It undermines the ability of individuals to challenge or contest the results of such decisions. For instance, if you were applying for a new line of credit, you have good credit, but some data is missing from your credit file. Now, that's not your fault, but an algorithm is not able to detect that. If you were able to meet your banker, for instance, face-to-face, you can actually present more information or more evidence. And again, you can also challenge the results of a decision if you were to see your banker, for instance. But with an algorithm, what can you do? You just have to close the website, for instance, if you were entering your details online. The traditional tools of the legal system, such as cross-examination and questioning the evidence at hand, are ill-suited to opaque decision-making, which is found in algorithms. And the black box problem is evident here, whereby humans cannot always understand the rationale by which an algorithmic decision system makes determinations. We aren't able to be putting ourselves in a position where we can question the decision-making. We are not able to speak to an algorithm and say, why did you do this? Why was this the result? It makes it difficult to identify and confront bias determinations and discriminatory outcomes. And again, this is now touching upon data protection issues and how your data is being used by these algorithms. But can the law really go as far to actually start saying we have to regulate algorithms? Correcting algorithmic bias has proved to be challenging. And again, in some cases, algorithms learn patterns that are socially undesirable, such as algorithms used in informing legal decisions in the US and identifying trends in historical data that led some court cases to discriminate offenders based on their race. However, there are times when developers have specifically removed the race variable to prevent all this unfairness, again, pointing to the fact that public outcry and public uproar has been able to produce an effect and an impact so that people can actually say, okay, let's take a step back now and say that there is an issue in this bias and we need to correct it. Legislation is also still evolving to protect individuals from errors in algorithmic decision-making in terms of cases of bias and discrimination. So we also been able to say, hold on, the software developers, the companies, they have to be held to account for using these algorithms in the first place. So as I'm concluding right now, we understand that algorithms are embedded in our daily lives, whether commerce, education, policing, transactions, business, shopping, customers, and consumer loyalty being built for on behalf of companies, targeted advertising, and so on. However, we must strike a balance between data protection and discrimination laws with algorithmic decision-making and its regulation itself. Algorithms are constantly evolving for businesses such as recruiters who use algorithms to detect the best candidate for the job as they sift through resumes. before algorithms were fully developed, many human resources or those in the recruitment fields were going through resumes manually. And it is a tiresome process and very cumbersome. Of course, using algorithms has helped with that process. However, the issue that we could think about is that sometimes when an algorithm detects someone's name or age or their race based on what they've put down on their CV, that kind of sometimes does more harm than good. So sometimes the human element that is missing in algorithms is an issue, and maybe the law can identify that too. And I want you to be thinking about your own opinion. Do you think it's better to regulate the developers of algorithms rather than regulating algorithms themselves? How can we guarantee the protection of our data if you cannot question machine learning and artificial intelligence on how they're processing our data to reach a decision? How are we able to say, okay, I agree with this use of targeted advertising. Is it beneficial to me, or is there something else out there that needs regulating? Thank you so much, everybody. I'm looking forward to having the poll. There are a few poll questions that the moderator, Mr. Moderator, that I would like you to present to the platform.
All right. Thank you so much, Rita, for the presentation. That was a great. So please, the poll is up. So the first two questions of the poll. Oh. So please, ladies and gentlemen, let's just go through the full questions. There are 10 questions. Then we have Barrister Relator to give us the insight to the answers. Please, if you have questions, right, please can put it up on the chat box, please. Put up your questions on the chat box. I can see, Dr. Babatunde, please, if you have a question, put it on the chat box, please. Yeah, we can answer all the questions. We have Dr. Barrister answer the question.
We're waiting for others to participate. Kindly feel free to join in the exercise, please.
Chief Justice, if you have any comment or questions, use the chat box, please.
I can see a message, a question as to the providing an insight into the big tech and algorithm bias. I think this is really, really interesting because we see all these big tech companies, we see Google, we see Amazon. We all know that, okay, Amazon, we sometimes think it is an e-commerce platform. It's actually a data company. And there's a lot of algorithmic bias involved because, of course, humans are prone to their own biases, and it's the human who are developing these software and these algorithms to produce a result for us. This is really an issue for big tech because it does lead down to how are they using our data? To what extent are they having this freehold over our data and processing in the background that we can't see? We can't question an algorithm if it produces an outcome that we believe is not favorable. For instance, when someone is applying for credit, an extra line of credit, but the algorithm says you are not successful on this occasion, doesn't really give you options of reviewing your case, or for you to actually say that, hold on, this is not right, or can I plead my case a bit? The big tech companies, Amazon, you've got your Googles, you've got all these other companies who are using their big platforms to generate a lot of data, because we all know that data provides great insight into how consumers spend their money, their best products, their services. But we also know that if there's too much bias, how can we trust what we are given at the end of the day? When an algorithm is basically saying that you need this or you should buy this, are you given much of a choice? Thank you so much for the kind comments as well. I'm really grateful. Let me say, I would say it is better to regulate the developers of algorithms, but how far can the effect of such regulation go in tackling breach of data? Is such regulation guaranteed? Again, if algorithms are now being used and developed, and there's a breach of data, for instance, who are we now going to go after? The algorithm, no? Or the company who has actually had this issue of a breach of data? Can regulation be guaranteed? It is a very dicey and ethical debate as well, because how far should we go? Sometimes we are comfortable in using algorithms instead of manual decisions. Sometimes it's much more comfortable and convenient for us to rely on the GPS, for instance, rather than our own knowledge or our own way of getting around an environment. Okay, I have seen a 62% participation in the poll, and I'm going to end the poll, but I'm going to give some feedback as to some of the questions we presented to all of you today. So the use of algorithms for targeted advertising by companies is beneficial as it opens the doors for consumer choice. Now, 92% agree, 8% disagree. And it's really interesting because even though consumer choice, is there really a consumer choice in that? An algorithm is basically saying to you, but based on what you've bought, this is what you should buy. But do we always do that? Even when the targeted advertising comes up, do we always succumb to what the algorithm tells us to use? Do they really know what we want? Can they really tell based on just one piece of item we ordered, then they know 10 items that is displayed on the web page. So 79% of you are aware that companies use algorithmic decision making when it comes to processing your consumer data, so that the company can help you make decisions. Some of you weren't aware, but there's some, because we are living in an age of technology. Even COVID-19 has shown us that technology has helped us come together remotely, whether students were being taught remotely, or whether businesses coming together remotely, and webinars now. But algorithms are used in the background to help make decisions on your purchasing power. 96% believe that there are ethical concerns when we allow algorithms or artificial intelligence to determine our choices. So again, is really, even though there are ethical concerns, 92% believe that using algorithms or targeted advertising is beneficial, but there are people who still believe there are ethical concerns when we allow these algorithms to determine our choices. Algorithms provide us with more control over our decisions than take away our control. Some actually disagree, which 67% disagree. So it just shows that, okay, maybe we are in control. Maybe we can say no. Maybe we do have that power to say, okay, no, I can actually make an informed decision myself. So it's good that we are not actually saying that we are going to be controlled by algorithms or artificial intelligence. Question 5, I prefer to use the GPS rather than my own knowledge. 58% agree, 42% disagree. No one said that they don't drive. So it's quite close, but I agree is have it. I can also say I agree. I do prefer to use the GPS, especially, but there are some circumstances whereby we won't use the GPS, for instance. If you know your route, you don't need to use it. But sometimes if you know your route, you just need to know where the traffic is. Again, that's the benefit when it comes to data and data processing. Question 6, the transparency and accountability issues when it comes to algorithmic decision-making is a cause for concern. 92% agree, 0% disagree, 8% they're not entirely sure. So maybe that is something we need to think about, the transparency. How transparent, how clear are algorithms used in the background? So are we able to hold algorithms accountable? Are we able to say this algorithm is wrong? You need to change it. There have been instances whereby we've seen algorithms have been wronged and the developers have actually either scrapped the algorithm or improved it. So it just shows that there are issues, but we again have that control to be able to say, be able to stand up for what we know and what we agree on. It is easier for an algorithm to process a vast amount of data than the human mind. Therefore, I think it is better for algorithms to help companies sift through data, even if the result is a discriminatory one. 80% agree, 20% disagree. Now, the reason why I asked this question is because of the discriminatory effect that some some algorithms produce. So because the algorithms are processing a huge, vast amount of data, it's easier for humans because we don't have to sift through all that data. But again, we are the ones who have created the innovation, and therefore, in a way, we are in control, but we're not entirely in control because of the processing that happens in the background. Question 8. Who, what, and should we hold accountable for outcomes that algorithms produce? 84% say the developers, 12% say the algorithms, 4% say the people. So it is really interesting because algorithms, if you say that we should hold algorithms accountable, how do we do that? Because they're not humans, they're not the person. But the people themselves, we, users of algorithms, should we hold ourselves accountable for using algorithms in the first place, for making our lives a bit more easier than, the manual ways of doing things from before? Who do you think should regulate algorithmic decision-making? The public, 12%, the law, 46%, ethics, 31%, the companies themselves, 12%. And in my own opinion, I would say the public voice, society. We are able to make changes through our voices when we realize that, well, in some of these algorithms, though they're supposed to help us, they're actually doing something, causing more harm than good. Question 10. What do you think is the most important ethical concern when it comes to algorithmic decision-making? Transparency issues at 50%, institutional bias at 19%, discriminatory effect 23%, the black box problem at 8%. I've been looking at some of the comments in the chat box. Algorithm bias can lead to extremism, for instance. Twitter, Facebook, and the likes banning people because of their beliefs is already making alternative conservative platforms. Yeah, absolutely. And it could be seen as the dangerous development, because how can we now start regulating cyberspace? Algorithms being in cyberspace, how can we make sure that that is successful? How can legal or lawmakers or policy makers start regulating such of these things? I believe it is imperative to regulate the developers of algorithms as well as the enforcement agency and laws. Absolutely, absolutely. And we have to strike a balance as to how much information or data is in the hands of an algorithm. I'm not saying that algorithms will now turn on the public, but how the impact that algorithms have on our decisions is just, we just need to be mindful of that. Thank you so much for all the comments. I'm really grateful for the messages. Dear Barrister, from your professional and industry prowess, how do the law enforcement controls the different biases emanating from algorithmic decision-making with regards to cultural relativism, reasoned behavior, pragmatic philosophy? That is really, I even see that as a really interesting thesis to think about, because we have all these law enforcement controls and agencies, but how can we control biases? How is that even possible when it's the human mind that is biased in the first place? So even trying to tackle that issue is an issue about the human mind and how we are using our decisions to generate outcomes, and for us to be able to see that, hold on, there must be more than what meets the eye with algorithms. Just looking through. Okay. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. It's very interesting to learn of your insights, and I hope this was a rewarding experience as I had found it. I know there's so much out there when it comes to learning about data and learning about algorithms and learning about how it impacts our daily lives. And again, touching upon the legal aspect, because data protection, we had the introduction of the GDPR. And of course, when we are giving companies principles to abide by, are we now going to say to the software developers that they also need to apply that kind of principle to algorithms when they make it? Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening on. Thank you, Mr. President of the Institute as well, and thank you for, I think the Vice President is also on the line too, and other fellows involved. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and it has been a very insightful presentation and very practical. There's a lot of questions coming up in my mind when it comes to the principles, right? Because this has been it's an industry issue that regulations have yet to solve, right? And the issue regarding where the controller how to decide for the processor, right? This is how I wanted to control my data, because how do you now show transparency? So we still have a lot of ethical issues to deal with when it comes to algorithms. And someone was talking about the presentation being more of an ICT presentation. So I think that is not, I think it's the same. It's from Dr. Marvin, right? So he says, this is more of an expert in the ICT domain rather than that of a legal professional. Well, Barrister Olete is a barrister, and she's presenting like a techie expert. And one thing I want to say here is that for you to be able to write good regulations that is enforceable, you need to understand the technology. And from this presentation, Barrister Antolesi have done justice by bringing this together. Thank you so much, Barrister, because this has been this is a continuous topic, honestly. Like I told you today, is a continuous session that there's a lot of questions in our mind, because a lot of issues regarding transparencies and fairness, because we don't know what is there, what data is being used. Because if we decide to find a way to regulate these things, it has to be industry-based. Okay. Thank you so much. Mr. President, please, if you are there.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, please.
I can see Dr. Marvin wants to say something.
Yes. Good evening, everyone again. So I would like to give kudos to Barrister that she performed excellently well for the presentation, because I could see that she's from the legal profession, and what she did, it was really excellent in the ICT domain. That's what I was trying to say. Not that she was performing in the legal way. I know she.
Hey, sorry. I'm going to mute you. Sorry.
Noted, Doc. Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much. Antoinette is so much, and I remember I wanted to go and study law, right? Because of these data protection regulations, because we are more from the practical perspective. But when we look at the balance between the regulations and the IT, we think upcoming present lawyers has to go back and understand the technology, because this is where the problem is. Because if you need to enforce data protection regulations, then we need to understand how to apply it across all the technological platforms, which is very important. Thank you so much. But the question has not been answered. Who is going to be held accountable when it comes to algorithm regulations? For me, the legal people is the one. Barrister, I will come after you guys, because you wrote the regulations. If there's any issues, the outcomes are going to come to you guys, because it's what you tell the guys to do, they're going to do. Thank you so much.
That's right.
Okay. Without taking much of our time, this is 8:03 now. So please, if you have there for the presentation, we need you to send your request to training@iam.africa.com for any further information on this webinar that happened today. And also, for those of you who joined us newly, welcome you. And Mr. President, I would like us to take the introduction of all the governing council members here in today's webinar. Please kindly unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the House. Princess Tiwalade, I saw you there.
Thank
Please,
you,
over
Mr.
to you.
Nago.
I'm there. I'm still here.
Correct.
So let me wait for the president to speak.
Thank you, my able VP.
Thank you, sir.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ambassador Dr. Yedokun, President, Chairman, Governing Council of the Institute of Information Management. Thank you for making our time to be part of February 2022 webinar. We hope to have you again next month with another interesting topic. My able VP, you have the floor. You can go ahead with your introduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I am Princess Tiwalade Fakunda, the Vice President of this great institute. I welcome everyone once again, and I want to thank our great presenter, Antoinette Okoye. As a barrister, as a legal practitioner, you have really done justice to the topic. And we are very grateful because the presentation was quite informative and educative. I say we are very grateful to you. And I wish you all the best. And I wish everybody present at this platform all the best. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, our able president and vice president. Okay,
Thank
my
you.
humble self, the moderator, I am the governing council member as well, in charge of public relations and sponsorship. I would like to, we have other executive council members here. I think that is all. So we just have myself, the president, the vice president, and my humble self here as the governing council members. Once again, we thank the moderator for the practical session. I'm so delighted for this. Mr. President, please, I will hand over to you now for brief intro and vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Nago. Thank you, everyone, once again. We really appreciate your making our time to attend this session, despite the fact that the notice came at a very short time. The Institute of Information Management, like we all know, is an international professional institute. And we would like to use this opportunity to invite those that are yet to join the train. Yesterday, I remember we had a very wonderful session during the IIM Monthly Business Connects, which is a platform where IIM members converge to share lessons learned, best practices, and also to bring in issues and challenges that has to do with them personally, and even when you talk about their careers too. This is a platform where those that are in need of any professional assistance, they have the floor and the huge IIM network, to share their problems. And you all agree with me that a problem share is half solved. And being an international professional institute, so we provide training, certification, and we also have a community of experts, that are available to attend to any data and information management issues and challenges being faced by individuals, organizations, and governments. Our core values are standards, certification, competence, and research. As a professional institute, we are out to ensure that the various sectors of the economy have adequate standards in terms of how data and information is being managed. We're talking about the management of the data and information life cycle, having a standard that is industry specific. Then we also want to ensure that personnel, individuals that are charged with managing data and information within the enterprise, they have all the necessary skills and knowledge and ultimately become certified to be able to carry out their day-to-day responsibilities professionally. And this is something we intend to institutionalize across the globe. Then we want to ensure that those professionals equally have the competencies expected of them to ensure that data is being managed in an environment that is secured and is properly streamlined. And ultimately, as an international professional institute, we want to ensure that we continue to research into various data and information management space for us to be able to demystify some of the issues and challenges that individuals, organizations, and governments might be facing when we talk about data and information management. So you will agree with me that the Institute of Information Management is a platform that has come to stay, and also the platform that is required not by any particular discipline or field or industry. It is a platform that is required by all, because there isn't any field or discipline that does not have recourse to data and information. And in our day-to-day activities, we generate data, we receive data, we store data, we use data, we collaborate using data. We do so many things and ultimately try to make informed decisions within our organizations, relying on quality data. So without data and information governance, achieving this in any enterprise could be a nightmare, which is why we want to use this opportunity to invite each and every one of us, regardless of our discipline, regardless of what we do, to join the IIM on this platform and join the IIM family. So without taking too much of our time, I want to say a very big thank you to you once again as we round up the February 2022 webinar. Next month, like I mentioned earlier on, we promise to come again with another very interesting topic for discussion. And like you know, our members are across the globe, and we try as much as we can to bring in best of the best in the industry. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening, afternoon, or morning, depending on where we are. Thank you, and remain blessed.
Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Please, we don't. Please hold on. Please don't. Please hold on. We need to have a group photograph. Everyone to turn on their camera. Please don't leave. We need the normal routine. We need to take the pictures. Everyone, please.
Mr. Nago, are you using a computer over there?
Yeah, that's why I use the PC. So that's why I just got home.
Okay, that is good. So you can go ahead with the picture.
Okay. All right. Okay, all the cameras should be on. Okay. Christiana Oche, camera is not on.
Mine is stuck.
Yeah. Here we have Dr. Larry. Please, can we turn on our cameras, please? Right, I think we have two groups. We have two groups, so I'll take the first group. Please, the camera should be left on. So while I do this. Okay. 1 second, please. First group has been taken. So the second group. I'll take this again. Okay, press close. Okay. This is safe. For the group.